Yeah, so maybe I'll just start with a very short intro before, we wait for the last participants. So we have a very large group today because we are going to talk, or Andrew O'Connell from Norstat is going to talk about a topic that goes to heart to many of us, and on which there have been a lot of very intensive discussions in the e-group. Um, Andrew will take us to a presentation about 20 minutes. On the end, there will be at least 10 minutes for questions. During the presentations, please drop your questions in the chat, and then we can make sure to answer them all after the presentation. But after the presentation, also please feel free to just unmute yourself and put your camera on and just talk to Andrew directly. And then for now, I'd like to give the floor to Andrew.
Great, thanks, Barbara, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to it's great that Norstat's getting more involved with the ICG this year. So we're very delighted to be part of a lot of the activities that are going on, and thank you for these opportunities for the lunch and learn, really. So yes, just a quick introduction about myself. I've worked in market research for about 30 years. I've worked in kind of online data collection for around about 20 years now. Before Norstat, I was the managing director of Donata in the UK for about 6 years. Yeah, it's probably a bit of a skew and a bias, which might come through during the presentation, but hopefully not. I'll try to make it as attractive as possible, really. So the agenda today really is literally a quick one-slide introduction to Norstat, talk through the evolution of online research, where it's come from in the last 20 years or so, talk about the advent of faster and cheaper, how researchers try to mirror marketing in general, how this has led to a poor responsive experience, which is obviously leading to poor quality data. So not really touching upon fraud today so much, it's more the poor responsive experience. Fraud is an altogether different topic. But actually, it's actually more controllable than actually the poor respondent experience in many ways. So talk through that. Then talk really about how micro businesses like the ICG members can differentiate with the larger agencies on quality. Really, the larger agencies have kind of almost become addicted to this kind of sampling ecosystem, which is really causing the poor respondent experience, and how that can be leveraged really again. And then, an objective checklist for what to ask for when asking for sample providers, and then really just go through this in-survey quality controls, which are all good stuff. Everybody has them, but they're not enough really. It needs to be about the holistic respondent experience, from recruitment through to registration, through to kind of engagement, and obviously the survey. So as Barbara said, it should be about 20 minutes. So I'll race through it, and then we'll have questions at the end. So really, just a very quick introduction to Norstat. Hopefully you've heard of us. We are an online, we are a data collection company. We're the third largest market research company in the Nordics, behind Kantar and Ipsos, but we do online, offline data collection in the Nordics, Quant and Qual. The rest of Europe is pretty much, we've got online panels, and the panels which are owned by us. And we are very obsessed with response rates. That's going to be very relevant to this presentation. It was all about the response rates of the panelists, really, in terms of, which really comes from the number of invites they get to take part in surveys, but also in terms of completion rates as well, how many surveys they get to complete, which they enter, really. So that's kind of our skew, really, is that we are a kind of very much kind of traditional panel company, which is still sending out survey invites according to people's profile. So in terms of the evolution of online research, I mean, if people are old enough to remember, at the turn of the century, internet was very much kind of static. It was almost seen as a kind of digital brochure at first, and then Web 2.0 came along, and it meant that all of a sudden web users could actually interact, and this really kind of became when online surveys emerged. By the mid-noughties, online research had replaced casting and face-to-face in some surveys. Obviously, it took a while before it kind of replaced any kind of legacy projects, any trackers. There's a lot of skepticism, as people probably remember when it first came about. But really, it became faster and cheaper. You know, you could all of a sudden get 1,000 nat rep within 3 days for like, £2 a complete, that sort of thing. And actually, in some instances, like ad testing, concept testing, pack testing, it kind of became better because you could actually show the visuals within surveys. So it kind of it almost kind of facilitated clients to be kind of more data driven, really, because they knew they could actually get go out to more people to our surveys, and actually kind of facilitated this kind of drive to be kind of more data driven. However, what it meant is actually more capacity was needed. And at any one time, whether it's a large country like UK or a smaller country like Ireland or Norway, there's always 5% of the population who are willing to do surveys, whatever the methodology, and that same with online. So it was infinite supply. So really what happened is that capacity issues, people might remember there's a thing called river sampling, where they said the internet is our online panel, and the idea behind river sampling was to almost intercept people as they're browsing through a unrelated website, and at the end of their experience on the website, they'd be asked to take part in the survey. However, this really did cause a lot of quality concerns within the research community, mainly because a lot of unverified people were taking part in surveys and you didn't really know who they were, apart from answering questions at the beginning of the survey. So really, it came back to actually having a proper double opted in, well-profiled online panels. But the problem is that you need to get more outreach respondent. And then what this meant was that the introduction of a thing called the routers, really. The routers would actually route people into a survey that they qualify for. So they would be shown like 2 or 3 surveys, and if they didn't qualify for one, then be routed into another. At first, it was a wonderful thing because actually people were actually getting to partake in surveys after entering the survey. But then, and what it really did, though, it kind of reversed the traditional sampling principles from finding people for surveys like on the street or random digital dialing or whatever it might be to actually finding surveys for people. So it kind of replaced that. And really what happened, it went from being a very good thing, routers, to one which is causing poor respondent experience. So just kind of give you an idea here is that the traditional kind of manual approach really for an online panel back in the day and used by some companies like ourselves still now is basically to have a profile panel and to know that someone banks at a certain bank, to then send them an invite if it's to do with that category or maybe that brand or customer. Obviously the invite would never be leading, and then that person would hopefully enter the survey having qualified for the survey. So it's very much profiling, invite, and then enter survey. Really with routers and the programmatic world, which kind of came about really from like 2010 onwards, really, it became more of a call to action, a notification on person's LinkedIn or Instagram that they got a survey waiting for them. They then go in to do 10 random pre-survey qualification questions. So there'll be very different questions, and one of those questions would then get prioritized to go into a survey. They might qualify, they might not qualify, in which case they go into another survey. They might again qualify, not qualify, into another survey. And actually, sometimes this whole process took about 15 minutes before someone actually entered the survey. Sorry, I'm just minimize that. So really what this respondent experience did really was, excuse me, just take myself out there. Yeah. What this respondent experience did, kind of respondents bounced around from different routers, often being asked the same demographic questions, which led to a lot of frustrations. And sometimes they do like 10, 15 minutes of screening questions, and they wouldn't actually still qualify for a survey and not get paid anything for that. So this led to a punishing user experience kind of inadequate targeting, insufficient conversation. And actually what it led to is a lot of respondent burnout and disengagement. So you throw this punishing user experience of actually trying to get in and doing a survey with all the usual kind of survey design flaws, like, lengthy survey still, and repetitive grids, too many open ends towards the end of the survey, which leads to disengagement, and you have a large dropout rate, really. So it was a kind of combination of the punishing user experience and the survey. Where it's probably differentiated with kind of the larger agencies, really, is that the larger agencies have needed to become integrated into this whole programmatic ecosystem, really. They've needed to deliver speed at scale. And therefore, they've introduced APIs that are connected to marketplaces that enable them to do this, really. APIs are basically application program interfaces, which basically are like pipes that connect one system to another system. And really, the abundance amount of data, the larger agencies kind of almost needed to kind of go industrial in terms of the scale, and this was a way of doing it. But what this meant was that respondents were kind of chosen and allocated programmatically for surveys, and it kind of became even more removed from the actual respondent experience. So it was a kind of unintentional consequence, really, that the larger agencies, unintentionally almost, really, but because of the demands of the market, the demands of the amount of data that they needed, actually became a little bit part of the problem, really. Really, in terms of, it's really more kind of question of, do end clients, do they actually know how bad things are, or do they care, really? They often have to make, the iron triangle decisions of trading off price, speed, and quality. So, have the end clients actually turned a blind eye to quality? Now, I'm sure most people on this call will say they don't, and I don't think many people think they do, really. I think it's, and even if you talk to kind of industry associations like the Market Research Society, they believe that end clients do care, and they're just not fully aware of the problem, and they probably think the problem's been taken care of, really, elsewhere. So and actually, the industry associations globally have managed to get together. They're forming, a thing called the Global Data Quality Initiative, where kind of Market Research Society, the Canadian, the Australian, and the Insights Associations in the US. So they're all kind of getting together to actually, almost produce a kind of working documents on what quality looks like, really. And certainly the end clients are being asked to partake in that, and we're getting their input into it, and they are actually very interested, really, and they will probably start owning this, as well as the research agencies, and yeah. And so at the moment, the GDQ, the Global Data Quality Initiative, is working on providing a checklist that you should ask for on a sample provider, as almost a kind of an objective benchmark for end clients, really. So it's almost a kind of a kite mark, really, for what they should look for. In terms of, for us, really, I mean, the key things for us in terms of whoever the sample provider is, really, the key things are, really, is to look for transparency. So it's to ask the sample provider, is it your own panel? Do you own it? Can you recontact the people? Do you have the relationship with the people? Do you have the history of their survey taking, versus, there's a whole market out there which are rebrokering other people's sample, other people's panels, really. So that's the kind of first key question. Then the next key question, which is related to that, is really understanding, what are the response rates of each panel? How many invites are sent out each month? Are respondents being bombarded with too many invites, really, which is obviously reducing their making their experience poorer. And then the key question really is conversion rates. How many respondents, when they go into a survey, are actually able to complete it, and they're not getting screened out, or they're not actually having a bad survey experience where they're actually dropping out. The industry average, actually, remarkably, is like 30% of people actually who go into a survey actually complete it online, which is so 70% of people, of respondents, are having a poor experience each time. So it's up to like sample providers to be responsible to make sure that that goes way over 50% and really towards 80%. And actually, one of the ways of doing that, funny enough, is to use synthetic data to actually improve the profiling of each panel, really, which is again a different story. But it's something I know that we're certainly looking to do, really, to get as much profiling information as possible. The other key thing here really is recruitment. You know, our panels, you know, are they, you know, do they have multiple sources? You know, it's very much kind of the likes of Meta, TikTok, Snapchat are becoming very popular now. Good places, you know, where you get younger people as well. So trying to make it as representative as possible. How are the panelists verified when they come in? Do they have a double opt-in experience where they need to receive an invite from you to their email address for them then to join the panel? How are they profiled on registration? So it's absolutely a key time really on registration for eliminating bad actors. So typically speaking, for Norstat and our UK panel, we recruit say 1,000 people each week. Probably about 25% of them are actually we do not pass our tests in terms of they have duplicate IDs, fake names, poor email addresses, that sort of thing. Really, they answer the questions wrong. Things like, you know, have you been on for a helicopter ride in the last month? You know, and so basically. Trying to eliminate the bad actors when they actually join a panel. And then really often it is the case that when there's a is to monitor the bad batches, usually there is a certain recruitment source which causes a lot of the poorer respondents. The other area really, so I just move this across, the other area is the value exchange. So, you know, is it a fair value exchange for the time that respondents are spending in surveys? So, you know, getting paid, they should be really, I mean, hopefully once the Global Data Quality Initiative comes out with its findings, hopefully it'd be things like, you know, £1 for 10 minutes, which is kind of the more kind of premium panels kind of do pay higher incentives really to make sure that that their respondents, you know, will never get paid minimum wage, but at least they get paid a fair amount for their time. And they get paid if they screen out. So they should, again, hopefully the GDQ will say that it should be 20p, you know, even if they get screened out. Everyone should get paid. They should be able to redeem their points at any time. A lot of panel providers have it at £20. It should be at £5 minimum, where you can actually pull out your incentives, and there should be relevance incentives as well. So I mean, the big issue we've got in the research in the sample ecosystem really is younger people. So providing gaming credits for younger people actually is quite a good incentive for them to do surveys. And then really the final area really is to look at the experience, the overall experience, you know, to ask the sample provider, you know, are your panels integrated into marketplaces? Are they part of APIs? It's look at the survey experience. You know, are the surveys device agnostic? We know that over half of panelists now want to do the surveys by mobile phone. So that, you know, most surveys should now be designed to be taken on mobiles as well as laptops. The use of engagement tools in surveys, so you know, you replace grids with carousels and that sort of thing. And then, you know, when there's a poor performing project, which is, you know, seeing a huge dropout rate, stopping kind of traffic, stopping people going into it until the actual questionnaire is amended, really. So these are all kind of simple kind of data quality checks, which you know, should be, you know, sample providers should be able to be accountable for and transparent with, really. Really, in terms of you know, in-survey quality controls are good and they're needed, but they're not enough. So, I mean, pretty much every sample provider now has a lot of these, and this is where there's been a huge focus in the last 10 years, and this is great. I mean, you know, we need all this, right? We need to be able to detect people who are speeding through surveys, we need to scrutinize open-ended questions to remove any kind of non-school or swear words or whatever it might be. We need to detect any straight lining of surveys. We need to identify any data pattern anomalies, unusual patterns, people answering one question a certain way, and they should be answering a question further in the survey the same, similar way, but they're not, so they're inconsistent answering. And then using AI as well. I mean, AI, I think used correctly is a very powerful tool for the research industry, and certainly it's very powerful for fraud detection within surveys. So you can actually find out whether, using machine learning tools, you can actually find out whether a respondent has gone on the internet and cut and paste from the internet onto and stuck it in, or they've actually quickly gone through the survey and they've hovered around the end of the survey trying to game the system, really. So AI is you can look at mouse map movements as well. Are they actually are they actually paying attention? So that's all good stuff, but that's pretty vanilla at that stage. So in conclusion, really, I think what we're saying is that over the past 20 years or so, we've had some great technological advancements, such as routers and APIs that have revolutionized data collection. They've made it much quicker and faster, much quicker and cheaper, sorry. But unfortunately, we're now at the stage where the industry is plagued with a poor user experience and there is rampant fraud going on. The end clients, this is often hidden away from them. They might sometimes trade off quality with price, but they will care if they know about it. And I think that's the job of pretty much every research, and that's where there could be a kind of advantage over it, to kind of putting this in a proposal, making them aware of it, really. I think an excuse so far for the last 10, 15 years has been that we're just mirroring marketing's faster and cheaper kind of agile pace, really, and that's why we've done it in research. Well, I think that's probably that's not really an excuse for the poor respondent experience, which is damaging data quality. As larger agencies are integrating this problem, it is a chance for the micro businesses, the smaller agencies, perhaps, to kind of highlight it at the very least to end clients. And yeah, you feel free, use the checklist in your proposals, educate the end clients. I think they want educating. I think the more they know about this, the better. And really, as is often the case with lots of things, small is beautiful, really. So yes. And that's 22 minutes, 21 minutes, I think. So yeah. So yeah. Any questions, please?
Thank you very much, Andrew. That was very interesting. I don't see any questions on the chat, so I think you have been extremely clear. Well, I indeed think you have. But if anybody has questions, please also free to just unmute yourself, jump on the video, and post your questions directly. Meanwhile, I would have some questions.
Yeah.
So I personally feel that a lot of the talk on this topic, as also from the sort of the panel providers or marketplaces themselves, is around fraud. Well, I think there is also a big problem in disengagement of real people.
Yeah.
But are like, and I guess also, of course, survey design has a role in that, but there's also part of people that really are doing it just for the money, and there's like tons of uh, chats online where people recommend each other where you can make most money.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that sort of balance, on also the size of the problem, and what we can do also as
Yeah, no, absolutely.
researchers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. I think you're right. I think it's kind of, this is very much like the panelist experience, how we can improve that really by things we can do. But you're right. I think there are kind of click farms set up in kind of in developing markets where actually a pound for a survey is quite a lot of money in a sense, and there are dedicated businesses which have been set up, and in Southeast Asia and Africa, in Latin America, who actually dedicated to actually trying to game the system and to do this. So yeah, there's a huge amount of fraud detection going on in terms of making the IP addresses is quite an easy one, making sure that it's a UK IP address or whatever market the panel is in, making sure that that's it. Also, in terms of you can actually identify from a lot of people's emails, the actual, I think, doing a profiling survey when they join on registration, actually, there are trap questions in there as well, which can identify people. So I think the key thing is, I mean, as I said, we probably identify about 25% of people come in who joining our panel are actually trying to, are potentially bad actors, and we kind of try and capture them at source, really. And obviously, once you capture them, you just never send them a survey, simple as that. So you never actually tell them that they're not, that they're trying to game the system or whatever. I know the Market Research Society is talking to the government at the moment about, making it more of a criminal offence or for trying to defraud this, because I mean, fraud is huge in lots of industries, like the entertainment industry, the game, in the betting industry, and in a way we're just a small part of it, but it is a problem. So I think it is being identified. But yeah, I think it's a combination of identifying the fraudsters, the bad actors, when they're joining, with a lot of the kind of detections that we can do, and then but also again having the in survey controls as well.
Right. Very, very, very helpful. One other question. In my experience, and I think something that a lot of other people might also have experienced, when you talk to panel providers about sort of the questions, and I think this is what the checklist is really super helpful, but sometimes they will go around a little bit or are not super likely to answer. Depending on the person you're talking with, they might also not be aware of all the things.
Yeah.
Would you have a recommendation of maybe sort of the 2 or 3 questions that are sort of, that don't come across as super aggressive, but do give you a good feel about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the key question really is to find out whether they own panels themselves, and which markets, and then to kind of do follow-up questions, which talks about response rates and completion rates, and try and ask them to be as transparent as possible. Really, I mean, you could always do it in a very nice way. You don't need to do it in a kind of accusatory way. It's like, saying we'll probably be looking to recontact these respondents. Therefore, can you guarantee that, or what's your recontact rate, etc. So there are ways to kind of almost test that people own panels, but that's probably the key thing. Things like using, do they buy programmatically? I think the whole programmatic world is that's the whole route of programmatic. That's the scale. That's where the larger agencies are using, and that's where they're getting bounced from one router to another router. And so I think they're probably the basic questions really you probably want to ask your sample provider. You almost want people to be able to say, do you know these people who are taking part in this, and can we recontact them, or even can we actually give them a call to actually verify them? So for example, if it's B2B sample, you probably you might want to just take a handful of the 100 odd completes and say we want to ring 10 to even to do a kind of qual, to do a depth interview afterwards or whatever it might be. So I think just kind of standing behind their people is probably the key thing. I think making people accountable and transparent, I think, is the key thing.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I think we don't see any more questions, and I think only 1 minute left. So so please also feel free to reach out to Andrew afterwards. We'll send a mail to everybody with also the recording, so you can look at it afterwards, and of course reach out to Andrew if you have any more questions.
That's great.
I think there's maybe one from Maria. Or Maria, did you have a question there?
No, I was just giving a clap.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Barbara. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.